The man who slaughtered Arhan's family was no ordinary enemy. Carlos was a swordmaster, a monster standing far above human limits, and no matter how hard Arhan trained, revenge still felt impossible. But just when all hope seemed lost, the portrait of his legendary ancestor, Liam Caravan, suddenly came to life. The founder of the Caravan family had been watching him in silence, waiting for the day Arhan's hatred became strong enough to carry the weight of revenge. And now, that day had finally come. Liam revealed a secret hidden in the Caravan bloodline, a power that sounded completely insane. By devouring a sword, Arhan could absorb the memories and techniques of its former owner. It was the reason the Caravan family had produced swordmasters for generations. There was only one problem. To begin walking that path, Arhan had to do the impossible. He had to heat Liam's sword, bite into the burning steel, and swallow it piece by piece. With his parents' bloody faces burned into his mind and Carlos's name fueling his rage, Arhan chose not to hesitate. He sank his teeth into the red-hot blade and tore off a piece like candy, forcing himself to swallow the burning metal. Despite the pain, Arhan continued to finish the rest, determined to have his revenge. To understand the story better, let's rewind a bit. Arhan grew up surrounded by stories that never quite matched the life he was living. His father spoke of the Caravan family as if they were legends, once powerful swordmasters whose names carried fear across kingdoms. But to Arhan, those tales felt hollow. Their home was falling apart, their influence long gone, and the village they ruled over struggled to survive. It was hard to believe in greatness when everything around him pointed to decline. But nonetheless, Arhan was chill with the people of the land. He even works alongside them on the farms, while also taking goods to the market to sell. It was a usual day for him to go to the market, and Arhan left happily, but by the time he came back, all he saw was a land filled with the blood of his people. Arhan is stunned by the gruesome scene unfolding in front of him. And suddenly, his butler appears behind him to console him, while revealing that a swordmaster attacked the village and only took 10 minutes to wipe out half the villagers, claiming that he was following orders. Arhan thought it was all over, but for some reason the swordmaster, Carlos, had spared his parents, and in that moment of warmth, embracing with his mother, Arhan knew that their troubles were not over yet. The swordmaster had given his parents and the survivors a month to vanish. With fear and no hope whatsoever, the survivors ran away from the village, leaving it desolate. Arhan's parents, however, chose to stay back because it is their responsibility as the leaders of the village. They try to get the butler to take Arhan away from the village, but he runs back halfway. Just like before, he only met a gore scene where his father's head is hanging on a pole, and his mother has been cut down. He tried to attack the swordsmaster with a crossbow, but he fell to his knees in fear, and the swordsmaster decided to spare him, but with a warning not to continue his bloodline because he would just appear to wipe them out again in the future. At that moment, Arhan lost everything, but swore vengeance upon his greatest nemesis, Carlos. Soon afterward, a year passed, and during this time, Arhan prepared for revenge against a swordmaster who was considered the pinnacle of strength. Arhan was left with questions because he had no idea why Carlos would kill his family or who was behind it all. Even though he has questions burning in his mind, he knows that one thing remains, and this is the fact that the lives of all those from the village who died in vain will never return. Just like he usually does, Arhan stands in front of the wall in his castle to stare at the sword and portrait that were said to belong to his ancestor, Liam Caravan. Suddenly, something strange happened as he stared at the portrait, and it began to emit a bright light with a voice emerging from it. When the light finally forms, it transforms into an old man who calls Arhan his descendant. Arhan could not believe his eyes because right in front of him was his ancestor, Liam Caravan. Arhan initially discards this because he believes that he is not seeing right, and he must have been suffering from a mental shock because of everything that has happened so far. However, it starts to become clear that the image in front of him is no hallucination. Liam speaks out, telling Arhan that he can feel the confusion in his heart because he is scared that he might have finally lost his mind. He also asks him if he is shocked that his ancestor, whom he believes is a myth, is standing right in front of him. Arhan then asks him if he is truly the founder of the family, the strongest swordsmaster in history. In addition, he wants to know why he decided to come at that moment if he is truly the great swordsmaster that they talk about. Arhan's anger and frustration take over as he screams at Liam, asking him why he chose that moment to finally appear. Liam calmly replies that he needed to be sure, revealing that revenge is an ordeal one must not even begin unless they are prepared to discard everything. Because of this, he has watched over Arhan for the past year and every single day. He realizes that, despite the fact that he possesses talent so trashy and hopeless that he himself can't deny it, he never lets go of his sword for a single day. Liam is blown away by his obsession and his will that refuses to fade away. Liam tells him that the reason he just appeared is that the hatred in Arhan's eyes has finally reached the depth that he wants. In addition, Liam confesses that his own patience has also reached the limit, and the murderous intent within him longs to tear apart the one who mercilessly killed his descendants. Liam mentions that there is one truth that cannot be denied, and this is the fact that only a swordmaster can kill a swordmaster. Liam is pretty sure that Arhan is aware of this, which is why he swung his blade to the point of insanity while swearing revenge. However, Liam lets Arhan know that no matter how much he trains, he will never catch up to Carlos. He explains that a swordmaster is a transcendent existence beyond the bounds of humanity. It is basically a realm so high that even those called geniuses cannot understand it. Even among these powerful swordmasters, Carlos still remains the top gem. Liam admits that even in his era there were only a handful with such skill, which means in the present age no one can touch him. He tells Arhan that as time passes, Carlos will grow even stronger. When Arhan hears all of these, his heart starts to tremble because he already had an idea that Carlos is way too powerful, but he never saw it in the light of being impossible to defeat him. Arhan groans in frustration because he can't believe that the man who took everything from him would become a hero, while he sits on the sidelines to watch helplessly, just like before. Just then, Liam tells him that things have changed because he is now there to help Arhan so that he might become greater than Carlos. Liam tells Arhan that he wants him to pass his judgment on the trash, Carlos, who killed his descendants like sheep. Liam lets Arhan know that there is only one way forward, and this is a path that only caravans walk. He tells Arhan that the way forward is for him to consume his sword, which is hanging on the wall. Arhan is ultimately confused when he hears this, and he stares at the man as if he were a madman. Liam then leads Arhan to the forge, where he explains to him that the caravan family carries a mixture of dwarven blood in them. Arhan places Liam's sword in the furnace while Liam continues to explain everything. He mentions that the blood composition comes from him because he is a dwarf hybrid. Even though the dwarven blood has traits that aren't visible, the blood carries special abilities that are passed down to descendants. He mentions that these abilities are tied to the blades, revealing that by consuming a sword, one can absorb the memories and techniques of its wielder as one's own. This is basically the power that has allowed the caravan family to produce swordmasters every generation, thus raising such a prestigious and great family. Arhan is surprised to hear this, since he has always known that dwarves are friends with metal and fire, but he never knew that they had such a strange ability. Even though the story sounds absurd and confusing, Arhan knows that the truth can only be proven by results. Arhan then looks into Liam's eyes with great determination, telling him to show him how to consume a sword because there is no hesitation whatsoever. Liam then tells him that the method is simple, and he is expected to heat the blade until it is hot enough to slightly soften. Once this is done, he is expected to bite and swallow it. Without hesitation, Arhan goes through with this, while wondering if he has gone mad or even bewitched. However, he doesn't really care about all these because if there is even the slightest chance that he is going to succeed, he is ready to take it. Arhan ultimately claps his jaw on the hot sword, and he tears off a portion of it like candy. A burning sensation runs through his body as he swallows it, and he screams in pain as if he has been set on fire. He loses mobility as he drops the sword in his hand while grabbing his throat in pain. He falls to the ground, but he refuses to pass out while thinking about the horrible things he went through. His parents' face lying in a pool of blood serves as a motivation for him, and even Carlos was the one at the center of his hatred. With this, Arhan picks up the sword and continues chewing on it with the drive to succeed no matter what, because he has to kill Carlos. After he is done swallowing the hot metal, he passes out. But when he wakes up, he is actually surprised that he didn't die. In fact, there was no scratch whatsoever, and he would have even believed that it was a dream if not for the sword hilt that was sitting in front of him. Just then he hears Liam's voice commending him, telling him that his willpower is pretty impressive compared to his weak body. He lets him know that many of his ancestors couldn't even handle the burning pain, which is why they usually give up. Since he is seeing him in 4K now, Liam knows Arhan will definitely believe the stories his father has been telling him and not count it as a mere myth. Arhan is blown away, but he composes himself and he bows to Liam, greeting him as their founder. However, Liam tells Arhan that he is supposed to call him his master, not founder, because this is what his other students called him. Arhan then switches it up by calling him what he prefers, while maintaining the bowing posture in front of him. Arhan asks him if this means he has inherited the great power that his father talked about because he was the one who said swallowing the sword would give him power. However, as it stands, he doesn't feel any different, and Liam lets him know that there is actually a problem with this. Although the problem is with Arhan himself. Apparently, Liam wanted Arhan to swallow the sword so he could move straight to master level. But because the concentration of his blood has reduced over generations, he can't digest the power inside it just yet, even though he has absorbed the sword. To put it simply, Liam lets him know that he can't absorb the full essence of his sword. Arhan is surprised to hear this, but he accepts it as what it is because he has to follow whatever his master says. Liam is shocked that Arhan is not overreacting to this, and Arhan reveals that he already knew that his body was weak. Even though the result was disappointing, he is at least relieved that there is still another way out. Liam asks him what he means by another way, and Arhan reminds him that he said it is impossible at the moment, which simply means that in the future, he would be able to absorb his power at some point. Alternatively, he can still find a sword that matches his current level of strength. Liam is blown away by Arhan's impressive intuition. He lets him know that he is right because the more the sword is used and worn, the better it is. He then asks Arhan to take him to a place that has a lot of swords, so he can pick the right one. Arhan then takes him to a junk site where there are a lot of used swords. Liam admits that the place is creepy as hell, and black mages would have loved to get their hands on a place like this. Arhan explains that all the junk from the slums find their way there. From worthless scrap to broken weapons, it is basically a place to find a sword that would fit what Liam said. Liam agrees that it is a good start, revealing that in his early days, he devoured swords in bloody places just like this one. They were swords by dead soldiers, axes that are covered in dirt and blood, and spears with broken tips lying around. Liam talks about how much he consumed these swords, and he urges Arhan to get stronger if he wants to survive. Liam says the place somewhat reminds him of back then, just like battlefields where lives clashed endlessly to stay alive. He talks about the cruelty of war and how countless lives fade away without a trace. Even among these dreadful memories and sorrow, he mentions that there would still be someone who would leave a brilliant spark of light. Liam then points to the distance, telling Arhan that he has found the sword for him. The sword is more or less like a needle, but Liam lets him know that this is what he needs. 1 month after this, some thugs make their way to the village, and the best place they decide to enter is the castle. They wonder why it is empty and start making up assumptions. One says they must have used the mansion for black experiments before abandoning it. However, another disagrees, saying they would have been dead the moment they walked in if that were the case. Another mentions that there is a possibility that a fallen noble is hiding in the mansion. The mercenaries are happy that they have gotten their hands on good loot because there is no one to stop them. One of them finds the clothes belonging to Arhan's late mother, and he starts rummaging through them. This entices the group, who believe that there is a lady living there whom they can have fun with after they are done looting. They start passing the clothes around to smell, but suddenly Arhan's voice cuts through the hall, telling the group to stop whatever it is that they are doing. Arhan emerges from the dark corridor, telling the group that his mother liked everything neat and clean, which is why he is going to ask them nicely to put everything down so that they can talk instead. The thugs start making fun of Arhan, since he is a kid, and even a boy at that, since they were expecting a girl that they could mess with. Arhan then asks them if they are looking for food or a place to stay. He assures them that he doesn't mind letting them stay as neighbors, but the thugs believe that Arhan is crazy for saying things like this. The leader of the group starts walking toward Arhan, telling him that he must really be stupid for not running away when he saw them. The dude lunges at Arhan while asking if he is eager to die. This ultimately turns out to be his biggest mistake as he unleashes the fury locked inside Arhan's body. Before he can react, Arhan pushes the needle sword into his abdomen, targeting a really vital spot. The baldy coughs up blood as Arhan stares him dead in the face with anger written all over him. 1 month earlier, after Arhan picked the sword, he had asked Liam if he was sure that this was the sword he wanted him to swallow, because it looked more like a needle than a sword. Arhan says it looks like something that would break if he tries to cut something with it. Liam tells him that this is exactly how it should be because it wasn't made to cut enemies or break things. Liam tells Arhan that it was made for one thing only, and it was basically made for a life or death fight. Liam tells him that it is a sword that is made for just stabbing. Arhan is confused when he hears this, and Liam understands why he would be because he can easily argue that a spear would be better. However, he lets him know that for a weak body like his, nothing beats memories that are inside the sword. Liam lets Arhan know that the owner, Mary, stabbed over 200 enemies with a body that is even weaker than Arhan's. Liam urges Arhan to respect the sword and swallow it with gratitude because the metal might be light, but the life inside it is heavy and serious. Liam lets him know that by taking in Mary's memories, he is definitely going to gain a lot. Going through Mary's memories, she was just a 10-year-old girl whose parents died in a fire. She only managed to survive with burn marks on her face, while her parents were burnt beyond recognition. By the time she woke up, she had softly revealed that she would have preferred to die with her parents. After Mary lost everything, she started living in an orphanage. And the day she learned that the orphanage worshipped the goddess of fire, everything became worse for her. She fell into despair because she basically lost everything to fire, but she is expected to live in a place that calls fire salvation. The rest of her days at the orphanage were awful, and she became progressively worse with other children always staring at her like she was some kind of weirdo because of the burn mark on her face. They say a lot of terrible things behind her back, and sometimes she hears them, which even makes her wish to die at some point. Mary was always wishing that she would die just so she could escape the horror, but everything changed on a particular day. She ran into a swordsman, Hegel, who was practicing his swordsmanship in the woods. Even though his swordsmanship was rough and clumsy, it was good enough to make her forget her pain even for a second. Hegel was an old swordsman and former wandering knight who had worked at the orphanage for years. On a normal day, Mary wouldn't have had the strength to talk to the old man. But she pushed aside her usual self and walked up to the man, asking him if she could become like him. She tells Hegel that she really wants to learn, and this becomes her first step toward wanting to live. Hegel takes a minute before answering, telling Mary that what she is seeing cannot help her in life because she is a girl. He tells Mary that weapons like the one in his hand only hurt the person holding them. He tries to discourage her, but she refuses, telling Hegel that she can learn it so that no fire in the world can scare her again. Hegel concedes, and he takes her to a room where there are swords sitting in a jar. He asks her to pick one of the swords, and if she can swing it, he is going to teach her. Mary asks if it is compulsory for her to swing it, but Hegel doesn't understand her question until she finally points to the needle sword. She tells Hegel that she doesn't mind as long as she can fight back. She stretches the sword toward Hegel, and the way she points it at his neck tells him that there is something sinister about Mary. Now in the present day, Arhan stabs the Baldy, and he crashes to the ground, sending a wave of fear into his comrades. They don't want to believe their eyes, but Arhan tells them that negotiations are now over. It turns out that for the past month, everything Liam has been teaching Arhan wasn't even about swordsmanship. It was basically how to train his body so he wouldn't get tired even after running for hours. Basically, he didn't even teach him any sword skills, leaving Liam surprised at how Arhan was able to precisely stab the Baldy. This then tells Liam that Arhan is absorbing the sword really well, and this signals his first step as a caravan. It turns out that Arhan stabbed the tout in a place where one can only reach if the sword is accurately slipped in between the ribs, which is none other than the lungs. Arhan knows that he is a complete novice when it comes to swords and everything related to them, so there is no way he could have performed such a precise thrust. However, it turns out that he was able to do this thanks to the owner of the sword, Mary. Going back into Mary's memories, it turns out that from the very first day she picked the needle sword, Hegel started teaching her. He taught her how to stand, how to properly hold a sword, how to fight, and how to survive. Hegel's beautiful swordplay was able to provide strength for Mary, and she truly loved the old man's swordsmanship. A few years after this, Hegel is seen lying on his deathbed, and he tells Mary that on the day she finally leaves the orphanage, she should make sure to go into the world. As he dies, he tells Mary that this is his final lesson to her, and he expresses his joy that he spent the end of the journey with her. Mary was left in tears as she watched her benefactor slowly lose to death, and his last words were to thank Mary for everything. After that, Mary followed Hegel's final words, and she left the orphanage to step into the world. In no time, Mary had made a name for herself in the mercenary world. Thanks to the fact that she uses a needle-like sword and was a young woman, she was given the name, the Stitching Gypsy. Tears flowed out of Arhan's eyes as Mary's memories flowed into him, and he finally understood what his master meant when he was talking about absorption. The Baldy is still alive and he is begging to be spared, but Arhan ignores his cries. He walks up to him and pushes the needle into his head to finish the job because he has made up his mind to finish what he started. Even though this was his first kill, Arhan didn't feel anything. There was no emotion whatsoever, and the only thing he could see was the situation left before him, which was the rest of the thugs. He knows that he was able to get the jump on the Baldy because he underestimated him, but this is not the case with the rest, especially the fact that he is outnumbered. He is pretty sure that the thugs know this too, but he can't understand why they are not attacking him even though they have the numbers. Liam then tells Arhan that the group is terrified, and it is understandable because what Arhan just showed are not movements of a beginner. Liam explains that a certain amount of fear helps one to survive, but excessive fear ends up clouding one's judgment. Just as he said, the thugs are freaking out as they turn to each other, asking themselves what they are supposed to do. Basically, the fear creeping into their body is tricking them into believing that Arhan is more powerful than they are. Liam explains that the thugs are probably looking at him like he is some sort of killing demon skilled with a sword. Since this is what they believe, Arhan decides to make their fear come true. He leaps toward the group, and instead of trying to defend themselves, they freeze in fear. Arhan runs circles around them while weighing their strengths. He dodges their frantic strikes before picking out his target. Arhan locks in on one and pushes the sword into his neck, ultimately severing his life. It turns out that Hegel once told Mary that she doesn't have the liberty of time since she is a woman and she has limits. Arhan is operating on that principle as he runs around the group with his insane agility. Since he is the weak one in the situation, Arhan knows that he has just 2 strikes at most to take down his enemy before he is exposed. The moment Arhan picks out his target, he goes for a vital spot and pushes the sword into them. Basically, it is a situation of, don't make up for what you lack, but make what you have shine. Mary's strength was her innate flexibility because her body is built like that of a dancer, and she uses this to her advantage. She is able to attack the enemy from any angle while maintaining even the weirdest posture. Using all of these, she takes down her enemies in just one strike, by going for vital spots like the head or the neck. Arhan is doing the same, and he has used this to take out the entire group except for one more. The last dude starts crying like a baby with mucus coming out of his nose as he pictures himself in hell. The dude doesn't see a human, but a killing demon straight from the depths of hell. After wiping out the team, Arhan digs a grave to bury them. While he was busy burying them, Liam asked him if he had finally put aside his doubts. He lets him know that if he possesses the stamina to swing a sword the entire day without losing his breath, he can hold his own against 4 untrained thugs. Liam tells Arhan that he is already growing stronger amid life and death battles. Arhan realizes that everything his master said is actually true because, from his body becoming flexible like a dancer, as if he is reacting to the memories within the sword, to the memories of Mary, all became vivid as the fight began. With this, Arhan could finally see how Mary was able to fight against her adversaries. He wonders if this is what Liam is saying about the power of digestion, on how one becomes stronger the more they understand their opponent. Liam then tells Arhan that he doesn't lie when it comes to swords, but he lets him know that his days ahead will be filled with pain. He lets him know that he is going to go through hardships that would make him beg for death. He says it is going to reach a point where it would look like his current suffering is nothing but bliss. Liam then asks Arhan if he can still walk this path, and Arhan answers with determination that as long as everything he does helps him get a chance against Carlos, he would do whatever is necessary. The next morning, all the determination in his face turns into fear as he is ordered to climb a very high cliff. As he climbs the high cliff with sweat running down his face, Liam can see how scared and worried he is. He teases him, asking him where the look of determination in his eyes from the night before disappeared to. He asks him if doubt has started creeping into his mind, but he is not worried about this because it is also a part of his strengths. Liam says he is aware that Arhan has always been like this since he was young. Even though he would need to address this someday, he tells him that for that moment he just needs to sort out his curiosity first. Liam explains that the path of a swordsman is largely divided into 5 stages. There is the sword beginner, which is the entry level of the sword walker, the realm reached by those with talent. There is the sword runner, and these are those who have been established as the axis of the battlefield. The 4th is the sword expert, and these are sets of people who can single-handedly turn the tide of war by themselves. Last but not least is none other than the swordmaster, and they reign above everything else, like they are gods. Liam then asks Arhan where he thinks he currently sits among the 5 ranks. Arhan takes a deep breath before telling Liam that he is pretty sure that he is expecting a spirited answer, but he assures him that he knows his level very well. Arhan says the prerequisite for swordsmanship is manipulating mana, and the second, which is needed to handle mana, is the formation of a mana heart. However, since he hasn't formed a mana heart yet, Arhan is honest with himself, and he knows that he doesn't even qualify as a beginner yet. Liam is pleased to hear this, and he commends Arhan, telling him that his self-awareness is pretty great. Liam confirms Arhan's suspicion, telling him that he is truly an amateur among amateurs who hasn't even entered the threshold of the sword. Liam tells Arhan that the training is to lead him to the path of a beginner so he can create a mana heart. Arhan is shocked to hear this, and he asks the man if all he is doing at the moment is to create a freaking mana heart. Arhan cannot believe that he is currently going through a life and death situation because of a mana heart. Arhan then tells Liam that he might not be aware because things are different in his era, but he explains to him that in the current era, one can create a mana heart by drinking an alchemist's potion. It can also be created by having a walker-class knight infuse mana to open one's senses. Basically, it is really easy to form a mana heart because ladies who learned swordsmanship for self-defense can even do this. Arhan then asks Liam why he would leave such an easy path just to make sure he is going through a method that can send him to his parents. Liam then tells Arhan that it is not actually bad to follow worldly methods to form a mana heart, but he lets him know that the power of Gunson steel is what resides in their blood. Liam tells Arhan that to unleash the full potential of this power, a sturdy vessel is required, which is why it is impossible with the heart of an ordinary person. He mentions that one can only reach the realms of humans with a trash mana heart, but if Arhan is serious about reaching the path of a swordmaster, there is only one thing he must possess. Liam tells him that what he needs is a heart of steel that is strong enough to clash with the world and not sustain a single scratch. Liam then tells him that there is only one way to form this heart of steel, and this is for him to drive himself endlessly to the brink of death, so that his body craves a mana heart of its own. Liam admits that only a few of his disciples were able to complete this training because it is an agonizing and horrific process. However, he lets him know that those who endured all the training to the end became swordmasters. Liam then asks him if he is now motivated by what he just told him. Arhan replies that he is more than motivated as he continues pushing himself to the top of the cliff. Liam assures him that the mana heart he is going to acquire will be different, and this is enough motivation for Arhan to continue pushing through. Meanwhile, in the East Village of Campbell, they have started hearing rumors about Caravan Village. It is now considered a spooky village that contains no single soul because everyone suddenly vanished a year ago. The rumor that has started developing is that there is something in the village that is considered to be highly dangerous. One dude mentions that no thug has gone to the village and come back alive. A lot of stories and assumptions surround the village, and the conclusion that they have come to is that one shouldn't enter the village unless they want to die. Sitting in the inn is a weird knight, and he hears everything the people are discussing concerning the village. The knight is interested in the village, which is now said to be a home of death. He takes his handkerchief to wipe his mouth, and the handkerchief is stained with blood, revealing that he is battling his own internal problems. The knight concludes that this home of death is the perfect place for him. On the other hand, Arhan continued climbing the cliffside with his left arm only after the motivation he received from Liam. There was no rest day for him, even on days when he had to deal with thugs who had entered the village. Arhan continued doing this every single day without missing anything just to give it his absolute all. With this, a month passed by, but even with the gruesome training that he went through just from climbing the cliffside, he still wasn't able to form a mana heart. However, Arhan could see that there was something different about him. While fighting, Arhan notices that one of the changes is that his senses have become insanely sharp. From his 5 senses down to his judgment and concentration during fights, Arhan has gotten insanely better. Whenever he holds the needle and he fully locks in, it is always as if it is Mary herself who is doing the fighting. Arhan would move around enemies as if they were frozen in time, and he was the only one operational at the time. Arhan easily turns the bodies of his enemies into holes that leak blood. It turns out that the reason for this crazy change is that Arhan can now feel mana. While meditating in the forest, Arhan is proud of himself because he is able to achieve all of these without forming a mana heart or reaching sword beginner just yet. Arhan knows that this is only possible thanks to the power of the needle. Arhan then asks his master what sort of power he is expected to possess once he reaches the next stage. Liam scoffs, telling Arhan that he still has a long way to go, so he shouldn't think he has gotten better. However, he lets him know that he is going to grant him the answer to his question. Liam explains that once he forms a mana heart to become a sword beginner who understands the depth of this power, he can then be said to have gotten to a level that is equal to Mary's. If he can move further from this, channeling the power from the mana heart, he would have reached the realm of a superhuman that is capable of strengthening physical abilities and establishing a field for offense and defense. Liam reveals that this is the stage that is called a swordwalker. Even though it is the next step after beginner, he would realize that the moment he faces it, there is a vast difference between the two. Liam then asks him if this answers his question, and Arhan says yes. However, Arhan has one more question, and this is about the man who just settled down in their territory. Arhan has been watching him, and he asks Liam if this fellow is a sword walker. Liam confirms this, saying the man is an opponent who is on a different level from the trash Arhan has been dealing with until that very moment. Liam asks Arhan what he plans to do about the man because with his current power level, he won't even last a second against him. Arhan replies that he is still monitoring the situation while preparing for any eventuality that might come up. Arhan tells Liam that he really doesn't have any choice in the first place. Liam then tells him that he still has the option of abandoning the territory so he can avoid a fight. However, Arhan replies that this is not an option that he can choose because even though the territory is now desolate, it is the only place where he can remember his memories with everyone. Liam understands his pain, and he urges him to become really strong because in this harsh world, power is the only answer. Liam tells Arhan to use his wishes as fuel to propel himself forward to get what he really wants. Liam urges him to use his pain as a source of strength to become as hard as steel so that no one will dare to mock his words ever again. Later on, Arhan ends up running into the night, and he orders Arhan not to take a step if he doesn't want to die. Before the whole confrontation, the moment the man arrived in the territory, Arhan had been watching him as part of his daily routine. Arhan learned something important in those times. Even though the village has loads of empty houses, the man acted as if people still owned them and didn't even bother to touch the smallest item. He only lives simply with just the one bundle he brought with him, and his other habits were gazing at the sunset every evening while lost in thought or spending time in prayer. In the end, Arhan concluded that the man was a knight, and Liam agrees with him, saying he is a swordsman who is skilled enough to reach the walker level. However, he is surprised that he still follows rules and manners strictly even when there is no one around to watch him. Liam reveals that this kind of stubborn person is really rare outside of knights. Arhan then mentions that since he is a knight, this means he might be a good person, since knights are supposed to protect their honor while seeking justice. Liam cuts in, saying there is no doubt that they chase honor, but Arhan is wrong for calling knights righteous people. He mentions that honor is something that is personal and subjective. He mentions that the honor that they follow isn't always good for everyone because a knight's honor depends on the person they swear loyalty to. Their honor is basically decided by the will of their employer, particularly the one who pays well. Liam decides to explain to the naive Arhan what a knight really is. He tells him that a knight is just a hired sword who uses honor as an excuse for violence. He is basically someone who uses ancient sword skills to kill efficiently, and since they are covered in expensive armor, they are simply an enemy that is much harder to kill. Liam tells Arhan not to be fooled by the fancy word that is called a knight, suggesting that he looks at what they really are so he can judge for himself. Liam tells Arhan that suspicion is his greatest strength, and he reminds him that he's been like this since he was little. When he was a kid, he would basically listen to his father's stories about the family, but deep down, he was questioning the authenticity of these. Even when a new power made him overconfident and put him in danger, his sharp senses and careful watching helped him remove risks so he could find answers. Liam continues by saying suspicion means not being swayed by what he sees or hears, but using every way possible while thinking endlessly to get closer to the truth. Liam urges Arhan never to lose his mindset of being suspicious every time, because people without this mindset can never go beyond their limits. Liam tells him that this is actually the real gift behind his skill with the sword. Arhan is totally locked in as he receives this important lecture from Liam. After Liam is done with the lecture, Arhan assures him that he is going to remember everything. It is because of these lessons that Arhan never lets his guard down around the strange man who is settled in his territory. Only after making sure that the knight might not be a threat does Arhan plan to ask him to be his neighbor. Arhan approached the knight in the most careful way that he could, but the two ended up holding swords at each other. The knight tells Arhan that he is aware of the fact that he has been watching him, but he urges him not to even think of escaping. The knight assures Arhan that he is going to cut him down immediately if he turns his back on him. Arhan maintains his defensive posture because he never thought things would turn out the way it does. Going into Mary's memory, she narrates how loads of mercenaries approached her to recruit her. On the other hand, thugs who had heard the rumor of how good she is decided that the best thing to do was to pick a fight with her. During these days, she had one thought that she might no longer be a random female mercenary with a sword, but a proper, strong swordswoman. However, it didn't take long before she realized just how wrong she was. She ran into a swordwalker knight who easily disarmed her while dunking on how trash her skills are. The knight tells Mary that he would have killed her if she weren't a woman, and he trash talks her, telling her that she is just an insect. Basically, it is their rule in the Red Hawk Knight Order not to touch women or children, and this was Mary's saving grace back then. It was this very day that Mary felt a huge, unbreakable wall between her and the knights. It was later that she found out that the level the knight had reached was called Swordwalker. As Arhan stands in front of the knight, he starts to understand something important. The Mary who lost to a Swordwalker back then was much stronger than his current level, which shows how much of a disadvantage he is at. As the knight approaches slowly, Arhan realizes that he is being overwhelmed by a fear of death that was far more superior to when he was even climbing the cliffside with only one arm. His heart starts beating fast like crazy, and with this, he sees the clear superhuman level beyond the walker stage. This is a level where mana spreads outside the body like veins, while adding willpower to attacks and defense. This is what is simply known as the Swordwalker's path. The knight then asks Arhan why he has been watching him, because from what he has noticed so far, Arhan has been the one attacking the thugs who visited the territory. The knight tells Arhan that he must provide a good reason, or else he would have to treat him like an enemy. The knight yells at Arhan to answer him, and Arhan replies that he was only trying to figure out if the knight is an intruder or a guest. Arhan tells him that this is his explanation, but the knight demands more, saying he doesn't fully understand yet. Arhan then explains that he was born and raised in the territory, but 1 year ago, while he was away for a short time, a dark sorcerer attacked, killing the residents, ultimately leaving the village in ruins. After this, thugs kept coming in, and he was forced to handle them by himself. Deep down, Arhan knows that there is no need to tell the dude everything, which is why he is withholding some of the information from him. Arhan then continues by saying he has noticed that the knight looks far stronger than those he has fought, and he knew that he could die if he had approached too soon, which is why he decided to watch to know if he is a friend or foe. Arhan says if he is friendly, he would ask him to be a resident in the village, but if it is the other way around, he would find whatever way he can to protect his territory. The knight is surprised that Arhan was prepared to fight, even though he knows how much of a disadvantage he has. Arhan then replies that the land holds all the memories that he has, which is why it is too precious to run away from. When the knight hears all of these, he realizes just how much Arhan has suffered. The knight takes a deep breath, telling Arhan that it is time for him to tell his own story, because for them to become neighbors, they should definitely know each other's stories. The knight then urges Arhan to lower his guard and put down his sword, so he can sheath his own sword before sharing his story. On the other hand, Liam reminds Arhan that there is only one way to build a mana of steel, and this is for him to keep pushing himself to the brink of death, forcing his body to create a mana heart of his own. Liam then asks Arhan if he is feeling motivated about the whole situation, and when Arhan finally replies to the knight's offer, he tells him that he can't lower his sword. Arhan tells the knight that he doesn't fully trust him yet, and he actually needs the sword for some level of protection. The knight is shocked to hear this, and he reminds Arhan that he would have taken him out of the equation if he really wanted to. The knight tells Arhan that he can't sheathe his sword first because he goes against a knight's honor, so he has to protect his honor. Arhan assures him that he understands where he is coming from, but lets him know that he can't back down. Arhan swore never to bow to fear and to never give up without actually trying to fight. The knight is shocked to hear these words from Arhan, who looks so weak that he can even be mistaken for a girl. However, he can see the signs that Arhan has endured harsh training, and while his frame is small, his balance remains impeccable. Even though Arhan hasn't learned the sword properly, the knight realizes that he is using an unorthodox form of pouring all of his strength into the first strike. The knight analyzes everything and realizes that Arhan is just a boy who poses no threat to him whatsoever. Just then, the knight notices that Arhan has a cold gaze on him, and with how things have been, the knight knows that a clumsy reply won't do justice. The knight takes in a deep breath before leaping towards Arhan, aiming to disarm him by striking his wrist, so he can avoid injuring him. Just as he is about to strike Arhan, Arhan locks in completely, and the next thing the knight notices is that his sword has bounced off. The knight is left stunned when this happens because Arhan isn't even a beginner yet. Arhan leaps backward after deflecting the attack, and the knight notices something strange about him. He realizes that the surrounding mana is moving without rhythm, just like waves. It turns out that in that split second, when he was about to attack him, Arhan was able to form the diverse mana heart. Even with a mana heart, the knight knows that it is impossible for him to have deflected his sword, but he somehow did it. He wonders if it is because of the mana heart that he harbors. The knight knows that usual mana hearts tend to be soft and flexible, but the mana heart in Arhan's chest is sturdy and firm, just like steel. At this point, the knight can see that Arhan has the strike of a lifetime in him. On the other hand, Arhan knows that blocking the sword's attack wasn't his skill, but something of mere luck. Arhan could later sense that from the beginning, the knight had no intention of hurting him because he aimed for the wrist to avoid the vitals. In addition to this, the power imbued in the sword was just a bit. This is basically why it was easy for him to have predicted the trajectory to be able to stab the tip of the needle into the gap that blocked the strike. Even though it was a miracle, he paid the price because the shockwave from it hit him like a carriage, crushing him. He was thrown into intense agony as if all of his bones were being crushed. With this, Arhan confirms that the difference in power is no joke. However, Arhan is glad that the thing he wished for so much, which is the mana heart, has manifested. Nonetheless, he is still a beginner, so his thrust won't be able to reach the knight. Since it has come to this, Arhan figures out that there is only one way out, and this is creating a mana path of his own by using Mary's memories as a stepping stone. In the past, Mary collapsed in tears after she ran into the unbreakable wall, which is the walker. She faced a limit that could not be crossed head-on, and his body trembled in fear. At that moment, the first thing that came to her mind was Hegel's voice. She remembers Hegel saying that the majority of swordsmen consider a wall a limit that they cannot cross when they face it. But this is just an excuse for those who chose to settle because they lacked the courage to break down the wall. Hegel mentions that walls are originally there to be crossed because they are nothing more than a stepping stone to climb higher. Hegel had told her never to turn away, but to stand tall and face it squarely. After facing her fears, Mary had returned to face the walker again with the acceptance that she is going to get cut really badly. But if she refuses to give up and just crashes against the wall, her sword would definitely cross over this wall. Following Hegel's advice and suffering many painful circumstances, she was able to cross this wall. Basically, it is all about believing in oneself. The wall is something everyone who wields a sword would encounter, starting from the intimidation slowly seeping deep beneath the skin, to the hopelessness that feels like it is going to crush the challenger. Just taking a step would feel like a heavy load, and there will be temptation to turn away, but in this dire and tough moment, Arhan stood his ground and crashed against his tall wall. Arhan knows that he is at risk, but this is exactly why he needs the life or death situation trial. Arhan is ready to push through, even if it is just a slight bit of hope that he has. Arhan takes a deep breath as he tries to analyze the knight in front of him. He wants to know which muscles he is putting strength into, how he catches his breath, and what trajectory he intends to follow. Arhan prepares to gather every clue necessary to create a single-strand path. Liam sees what Arhan is doing, and he is totally impressed by how much Arhan is pushing himself. Apparently, it is the way of the caravan family not to fear even in times of impossibility. They are required to face the trial head-on while showcasing the will of the caravan family. Arhan continues to put everything in place, and the moment he figures out that he is ready, he dashes toward the knight. Back then, Mary admits that she was afraid of fire and the fact that the tragedy that took everything from her was just the beginning. There were even days that she couldn't even face the mirror, and there were days when breathing was a burden. This was how she found out that she was not supposed to be afraid of fire, but her own weakness, which only made her run away. Because of this, Mary swore that she would break through the wall of fire that took away everything, including her future. With a determined heart, Mary pushed forward and conquered her fear of fire and of the world. She knows that if she crumbles, there is no win for her. And this is the mantle that Arhan is operating on. He puts everything into his attack, giving the knight a tough time. The knight is forced to put enough strength behind his sword so he can block the attack. Arhan's sword flies out of his hand with the base shattering just as it had happened to Mary. Mary's soul stands in front of the sunset as she takes in a breath of fresh air while thinking of Hegel's words. Mary stares into the sky, telling Hegel that the world was full of monsters stronger than she is, and there were many high walls that could not be crossed just because one has the will to do so. However, she could proudly say that until the very end of her life, she never turned back from any wall that blocked her path. With a solemn and emotional declaration, she hopes that there is an afterlife so that she can also tell Hegel her story. In the end, her soul ends up getting into contact with Hegel's, and she runs into his arms like a baby while revealing that she is no longer afraid of the fire. Tears run down her face as she tucks herself into Hegel's arms, and the needle burns off, ultimately signaling the end of her story. In turn, this also signals the complete assimilation of the needle into Arhan's system. Soon afterward, Arhan wakes up with the realization that he actually passed out. He notices that there is a robe used to cover him, which obviously belongs to the knight. This is when it fully dawns on him that he wasn't able to achieve his goal. Liam quickly comes in, telling him not to be heartbroken because he engaged in a struggle that brought no shame to the family's name. In fact, he was able to gain something alongside the painful defeat that he suffered, which is the complete assimilation of the needle. Arhan understands what the old man is saying because he can now feel that his muscles have become more flexible than before, and his senses have sharpened like those of a wild beast. Basically, he has climbed up the cliff like a veteran mercenary who has lived a lifetime on the brink of death. Arhan finally understands why his master chose the sword, and this is because he wanted to show him not just power and technique, but Mary's entire life. Liam wanted to show Arhan the strong will that never gives up, even in the face of a massive trial. Arhan smiles because Liam could have just told him this from the very start. Just then, the knight shows up in the distance, expressing his relief that Arhan has woken up. He mentions that he just left to get drinking water, but the moment Arhan spots him, he immediately gets defensive. He grabs his sword and moves into a striking pose, but the knight understands why he is acting so defensively. The knight tells him that they would have to clear the misunderstanding between them, and even Liam tells Arhan that he has no need to act so warily because the knight has no intention of killing him. However, it is normal to be suspicious, and Liam understands this. The knight tells Arhan that he understands he has been through some tough times, so it is normal for him not to lower his guard, but he asks him if he would be willing to lower his guard so he can hear his story. The knight starts taking off his shirt to show Arhan why he came to the territory and why he can't be a threat to Arhan. After taking off his shirt, he introduces himself as Patel, who is a retired knight and a wanderer with nowhere to go. It turns out that he is suffering from a terminal disease, and death is on his door already. He mentions that high priests who have trained in medicine their whole lives have assured him that he has 1 month left at best. Basically, Patel is just a sick man waiting to die. With this secret out in the wind, Patel asks Arhan if he would finally listen to his story. The two then settle down to talk, but unlike Patel's fine swordsmanship, he was bad with words, and he struggled to articulate his words. However, his emotions were true, and what Arhan sensed about him is that he is a knight who left the order he pledged loyalty to after receiving a terminal diagnosis so he could find a place to die. Petal mentions that he left the order because he didn't want to become a burden as his life slowly vanished from him. He mentions that he wants to spend his last moments quietly with his own time. After hearing everything he has to say, Liam tells Arhan that he doesn't sense any lies in what Petal has said because even as he is speaking, his heart is being devoured by the disease. He reveals that the moment the disease encroaches upon his mana heart to reach his heart, he is going to finally die. Petal then asks Arhan what he thinks about him becoming his neighbor. Arhan takes a minute to answer, and he tells Patel that he is pretty sure it was difficult for him to have shared his story, and because of this, he is grateful that he did. Arhan introduces himself and reveals that he is the last descendant of the land after he lost everything. Arhan shakes hands with him to welcome him, and Petal accepts the hospitality while thanking Arhan for the honor. Since Arhan has finally gotten his mana heart, he believes that it is time to take the next step, and Liam tells him that there is one place he needs to go. Some days later, Arhan travels away from the territory. While sitting in the carriage, he tells Liam that he was actually expecting him to teach him swordsmanship directly, since he now has his own mana heart. However, Liam had to drag him out to nowhere, and it is thanks to Patel that he could leave the territory because he would definitely take care of any invited guests. Arhan then asks Liam if there is any reason for him to have come all that way, and Liam tells Arhan that he seriously needs to escape his commoner mindset. Liam tells him that their family is different from anyone else in the world, which shows how special they are. Liam tells him that as long as the blood of steel flows in his body, rather than sword training embedded in the gaps of his growth, the assimilation of a new sword is the priority. Liam reveals that the destination they are heading to is the perfect place to seek out because it is a place that is not bound by status or origin. It is a place where only those who crave flesh gather, and it is a stage for life and death duels. This place is none other than the arena, which is teeming with adrenaline and blood. They soon arrive at Firma, the Steel City, which is one of the cities that represent the Seven Kingdoms, where metalworking is advanced, and it is no exaggeration that almost every weapon in the Iron Kingdom is made there. It is basically the Holy Land of Swords, but before that, the real reason Firma became so great was something else, and it was because of the arena. Upon arriving at the arena, Liam is hit with a wave of nostalgia because he can remember just how exciting it was to be there. Liam mentions that a lot of crazy fights happened in the arena, ranging from beasts versus beasts to find the strongest one, human against monster, which were classified as savage matches and even fights between different races to decide who is superior. All these matches were intense, but the wildest one was the deathmatch struggle. There are fighters full of different styles and skills rolling on dirt, fighting like animals, and the winner takes the loser's life while grabbing everything they own as a prize. It is a total mad slaughter from the crowd who are drunk on the smell of blood, happily throwing gold coins, making bets, while screaming like crazy. It is basically the mad city that is built on piles of spilled blood. After hearing all of these, Arhan admits that there is no better place to get stronger, and he can see just how excited Liam is about the whole thing. Arhan believes that he is going to get battle experience while becoming stronger from eating the swords of those he defeats in battle. However, Liam lets him know that he is getting everything wrong, because if it were that easy, he would have made Arhan eat every weapon in the junk pile back then. Liam tells him that he cannot just start eating swords randomly, because if he does this, the mixed memories of these swords will consume him instead, and he will ultimately lose who he is. Liam tells him that he has to control the sword, and not let the sword control him. Liam lets him know that he is only allowed to eat the swords he chooses for him until he is able to open his own eyes. Liam then suggests that they head into the arena itself. They are required to register, and 3 hours later, the attendant finally tells Arhan that he has to go to the registration counter to get his medal issued because he can't fight without it. Arhan is confused when he hears this because the medal is not something he is aware of, and even Liam has no idea what it is. Liam tells Arhan that there was nothing like this back in his day. The green-haired attendant lady shows Arhan what a medal looks like, and she urges him to get one before coming back to the line. It turns out that medals are a special rank mark that exists only in the arena. They are decided by one's known fame, status, fight record, and so on. The color of the medal shows just how strong one is, and it is ranked from strongest to lowest. There is the black medal, the white medal, the platinum medal, the gold medal, and the silver medal. Since he is just a rookie, the one he can get his hands on is the bronze color, which is total crap. Arhan cannot believe that things have changed compared to what his master said. Hours earlier, Liam was boasting about how a rookie can enter the arena to fight 100 people. Basically, there was no discrimination because once one arrives at the arena, they are immediately thrown onto the stage. However, there are weight classes now, which is totally trash to Liam because it is all built on money. Arhan says even if the kingdom prides itself on strength and they keep doing deadly fights for hundreds of years, no fighters would be left, and the betting people would get bored when strong and weak keep switching wins. Basically, strong fights should be between strong people and weak people against weak, which is way more fun. Arhan lets Liam know that the era has changed, and because of this, the arena became a famous place that people travel far to see. This is basically why Firma grew so big, and it is more or less a smart change. Arhan mentions that in this era, it is not compulsory to kill the loser, but the loser still gets hurt badly. However, Liam is not up for the trash changes, and he just tells Arhan to keep the information to himself because the more he hears, the angrier he gets. Although he believes that this might be a stroke of luck for Arhan, he tells him that it is going to be a great experience for him to fight someone on his level because this would always teach him something new. However, until then, Liam suggests that they look around the weapon shops because the quality will be way better than the small shops near Caravan. Since Arhan's sword breaks too easily, Liam believes that it is not a bad idea to get some extra ones as backup. Suddenly, they walk past a trophy wall that houses weapons instead of medals. Arhan and Liam are left in total shock by this. Arhan is in the middle of his admiration when a man, Tom, shows up on the scene. Tom could clearly see that it was Arhan's first time seeing the Hall of Honor, and the dude introduced himself as the caretaker. Tom tells Arhan that he is willing to explain the Hall of Honor to him, and Arhan bows his head to the man, telling him that he would very much like it. Tom mentions that the weapons on the wall belong to fighters who did amazing things in the arena long ago. The weapons are all old and broken, and since they can't be used again, they are kept on the Wall of Honor to remember the fighting spirit of their wielders. Arhan is completely overwhelmed by this, and Tom tells him that he is free to ask him any question that is burning on his mind. Tom excitedly mentions that it is his pride as the caretaker of the place. Liam immediately tells Arhan to ask Tom if there is a way to take the swords that are displayed on the wall, because he has found the next sword he needs to consume. Tom lets him know that there is, and it is for fighters who prove themselves. These fighters earn the right to take one weapon that matches their medal, so every time their medal rank goes up one level, they get one more weapon. Tom lets him know that the weapon he is staring at so intently can be his once he reaches the silver rank. After this, Arhan heads to the arena, and as they pass through the corridor to the arena entrance, Liam tells Arhan that the hall is basically a treasure room. Liam says to others, it might look like old useless junk, but to Arhan, the swords are pure gold. Liam is excited because Arhan now has a lot of reasons to come to the arena, even if it is just for training because he has to get his hands on some good swords through ranking up. Liam says he would have just preferred to steal all of the swords, but this is pretty impossible because Tom is not an ordinary fellow. Arhan doesn't understand this because Tom looks like a nice old man, and Liam understands why Arhan couldn't see what he saw because there is a huge difference between them that he couldn't feel. Liam explains that Tom can turn his mana into armor and make perfect defense even though it is half finished. Basically, the nice-looking Tom is a sword expert. Arhan is shocked when he hears this because the sword expert rank is just before the swordmaster rank. Arhan asks Liam why someone as strong as Tom would prefer to be a caretaker. Liam tells him not to be surprised because almost everyone who reaches that kind of level has something weird going on for them. Liam concludes that they are going to rob the hall later, and Arhan believes he still has intentions to rob the Wall of Honor even though he knows the risk. In fact, Arhan has no idea when he agreed to this. Liam then continues by saying a lot might have changed in the arena, but there are some things that never change. Things like hiding one's face so they can leave their rank, fame, and name outside just to challenge like a regular fighter are the old traditions of the arena. Arhan says it is a pretty good tradition because since it is only fighter against fighter and no background, he is free to fight without holding back either. Just as he is about to enter the arena, the referee stops him, telling him that he has to provide a nickname before he can enter the arena. Arhan is confused by this, and Liam mentions that no one who enters the arena uses their real name because things like titles and status from outside would only get in the way when one stands as a fighter. The man urges Arhan to tell him the proudest name he is going to carry in his fighter life, and Arhan thinks about it for a minute before choosing the name he wants, which is Liam. The man is surprised to hear this since he has never heard of it before, and he asks Arhan if it is some sort of main character from a knight story. Nonetheless, he can only hope that victory follows him for his first fight. Since bronze is the weakest in the arena, fights among bronze fighters only interest small-time gamblers. No one really cares about bronze fighters because they are nothing more than cheap entertainment, which is why the crowd doesn't cheer for the fighters but would rather throw nasty boos and insults at them. Arhan had barely stepped into the arena when those who were present started talking down on him. They call him a skinny loser who is about to lose his head. Liam is not surprised that they are shouting insults because in the Iron Kingdom there is no respect for the weak, since the strong rule everything. Liam asks Arhan if he is being affected by the insults, but he says no. Liam is relieved to hear this, and he reminds Arhan that he put his name on the battlefield, which means he is carrying all of Caravan's history and honor. Arhan assures Liam that he is aware of this, which is why he has to win no matter what. Arhan walks up to his opponent, who is a giant, scary dude with a big weapon. The referee welcomes the spectators to the match between two rookies, who are there to show them what it is to be a weakling. The referee introduces Arhan as Liam to the crowd, while mentioning that he is a complete newbie. On the other hand, his opponent, Tamir, is a fighter who has been killing all of the fighters he has faced since his debut. The referee continues by saying the fight is dedicated to the goddess, Lepre. The referee has not even finished his introductions when Tamir starts to trash-talk Arhan, telling him that he has a stupid nickname, which sounds forgettable and weak. Tamir boasts that he won't have to use his weapon on Arhan because it is just going to be a waste of time. Tamir then makes Arhan an offer, telling him to take off the dumb mask that he is wearing and also drop his sword so he can dance when he claps his hands. Tamir tells Arhan that once he does this, he might at least leave his skinny neck attached to his body. Arhan remains mute as Tamir continues running his mouth. When he finally speaks up, he tells Arhan that he heard there is an unspoken rule that the fighters don't kill each other. Tamir laughs out loud when he hears this, saying Arhan must have decided to challenge the arena because he thought he wouldn't die. Tamir screams at Arhan, telling him that no one cares about any stupid unspoken rule because where he grew up in the Zernia Mountains, the loser male always dies. This is basically why he has killed all the last 3 guys that he has fought by breaking their necks with his own hands. Tamir says Arhan might have asked why he is going this far, and Tamir maniacally reveals that it is the best kind of fun. However, Tamir tells Arhan that he looks way too weak, and even if he snaps his neck, he might not feel anything thrilling whatsoever. This is why he wants Arhan to at least shake his body to provide some sort of entertainment for him and the crowd. The referee is blown away by the amount of trash talk that has already gone down between the two, and he says the match might actually be fun to watch. Once everything is ready, the referee starts the match. Tamir stands in his position nonchalantly, waiting for Arhan to attack him first. Just then, Arhan tells him that he has an offer for him. Arhan points the needle at Tamir, telling him to take back the insults he dumped on his family. He tells Tamir that if he does this, he might just let him die easily. Tamir takes this as the greatest joke in his life, and he laughs out loud. Even the crowd makes fun of Arhan, saying he is trying to act all scary, while asking him if he read that line from some cheap novel. The crowd joins Tamir in mocking his nickname because no one in their right mind would choose Liam as their nickname. Tamir teases Arhan, telling him that he has got the mood up and he can't hold back anymore. Tamir starts drooling because of the excitement he is already picturing in his head, but suddenly Arhan appears underneath him, pushing the needle into his hand, removing a couple of fingers while reminding him of the offer he made him. Tamir watches in shock as Arhan suggests that he apologize if he wants a quick and painless death. Arhan leaps backward to create some distance between them after cementing his stand. Tamir angrily slams his big weapon into the ground, forcing Arhan to jump further back so as not to get caught in the attack. With blood dripping from his hand thanks to the loss of his fingers, Tamir screams out in pain and anger. His voice is so loud that it catches the attention of everyone in the arena. Tamir tries to understand what just happened because moments earlier, Arhan was shaking like crazy, looking like a lame, weak child. This leaves him wondering how Arhan was able to reach him so fast. It suddenly dawns on Tamir that Arhan might have been pretending to be weak so he could lower his guard. Arhan knows what he is thinking, and he asks if he plans to call him a coward for this, while reminding him that he was the one who said the arena is not for kids to play around. Tamir groans in pain and frustration as he calls Arhan a piece of shit. He leaps toward Arhan in anger, threatening to tear him into pieces. Tamir frantically swings his sword at Arhan, but he dodges the attacks easily with his flexible body. Tamir starts getting worried because Arhan is easily dodging everything he is throwing at him by a paper's width. Fear starts creeping into his body as he wonders what sort of person he has run into. It is as if a giant serpent is overwhelming him in an enclosed space. Before Tamir knows it, Arhan goes after his lower section and pushes his sword into his leg. Tamir doesn't immediately feel the gravity of this, and he swings really hard at Arhan. However, Arhan dodges the strike just like before. Arhan leaps backward like a mantis while wearing a cold gaze. Just then, Tamir starts feeling everything all at once. His sword falls from his hand and he crashes to the ground in pain as he loses control over his leg. With the dude rolling in pain, Arhan walks up to him, telling him to take off his stupid helmet and dance to his clapping just like he told him. Arhan looks totally scary as he repeats Tamir's exact words to him. Realizing that he is about to lose his life, Tamir has no choice but to accept Arhan's offer. However, he tries to be sneaky since Arhan has moved closer to him. He tries to grab his sword with his left hand, but Arhan pushes the needle into his left hand, crushing it completely. Tamir groans in pain, and Arhan urges him to think hard about his next decision because it might be his last. Immediately, Tamir realizes that Arhan would truly kill him if he is not careful. He succumbs, and he starts to apologize to Arhan, telling him that he is sorry for insulting his name. Tamir begs Arhan, urging him to let him live, and with this, Tamir concedes defeat. The initial boring arena immediately goes wild as everyone starts to celebrate the entertaining match that they just witnessed. Everyone in the arena agrees on one thing, and this is the fact that Arhan is quite strong because he is the best bronze fighter they have seen in recent times. Those who bet on Arhan are the happiest because they now have a fortune. They start praising Arhan as they add a prefix to his name, calling him Little Gladiator Liam. The whole arena goes up in excitement as the people hail Arhan. It turns out that Tom also watched the match, and he is glad that his suspicions about Arhan not being a normal person are right. Tom smiles because it is as if he has just made friends with a real promising fighter who could pull a loud roar on his first fight. At the same time, Tom is worried because too much attention in the arena can sometimes be poisonous. It turns out that there are some influential people who watched Arhan's match, and they are already plotting their move. Some days later, the green-haired attendant shows up, telling Arhan something shocking. She tells him that the arena likes him, and because of this, they are willing to offer him something very rare, which is the Silver Promotion Challenge. The lady then asks Liam if he is up for the challenge. It turns out that 2 days after his debut fight with Tamir, 3 matches happened during that space of time, and Arhan had won everything in a completely calm and efficient way. Arhan figures out that this offer is because they like how he fought in those matches. However, he doesn't think that they are giving him this offer because of pure kindness, and he is convinced that there is something else behind it all. The attendant tells him that the rules are simple, and it is just for him to fight a player that they choose. The best part of it all is that he doesn't have to try hard because he is expected to last just 3 minutes in the arena. Apparently, if he lasts 3 minutes after the fight starts, he automatically wins. The attendant tells him that this is a very rare offer that doesn't come that often. In addition, it is common knowledge that once he becomes silver rank, he is going to be able to fight stronger opponents than before. In addition to this, he is going to get a much higher pay from the fight, just for surviving a 3-minute battle. The attendant looks really sly as he asks Arhan what he plans to do with the offer, while reminding him that it is not an offer that comes every single day. Liam then tells Arhan that there is an old tradition in the arena that is called rookie crushing, which exists to crush smart, efficient rookies like him. It is a special arena event made just for the twisted pleasure of annoying spectators, who get off watching their prey's blades snap and their bodies wrecked. They basically use the promotion as a bait to lure in their prey, then throw them against someone way too strong for them just to humiliate them publicly. Liam tells Arhan that if he doesn't want to embarrass himself, it would be better if he refuses the offer, because a normal promotion chance will still come in the future. Liam asks Arhan what his answer is, and Arhan tells Liam that he should have known the most obvious answer, which is the fact that he is going to accept the challenge no matter who the opponent is. 2 days after he accepted the challenge, the arena sent him a letter revealing his opponent, who is nicknamed Black Bride. The Black Bride graduated from a top academy and they have never lost once in silver rank. Black Bride is basically a real powerhouse among swordwalkers, and since the academy doesn't produce trash talents, the academy certificate alone gives one the opportunity to become a knight, which is the ultimate elite badge. To put it simply, Black Bride is ahead of Arhan in every aspect. Arhan reveals that he checked about the Black Bride, and it turns out that they dominate every fight, leaving every single opponent with the inability to fight ever again. Liam realizes just how serious the arena guys are, because if they prepared this much for him, it means lasting 3 minutes in the arena is going to be a big task for him. Liam mockingly tells Arhan that he is utterly screwed. Arhan asks Liam if it is that serious because he believes that Black Bride can't be that stronger than Patel. Even though Patel is sick and weak at the moment, he used to be one of the strongest swordwalkers. However, Liam lets him know that the situation back then and his current situation are absolutely different. He lets Arhan know that Patel held back during their match out of respect for him, but it is pretty obvious that he won't get that kind of luxury from the Black Bride. Just from hearing this, Arhan can imagine his head flying off his neck, and he thanks Liam for making things worse. However, he knows that Liam never lies about anything related to the sword. At the same time, Arhan thinks he has a chance because he has his mana heart and Mary's memories. Since it is just 3 minutes to survive, Arhan thinks he can get it done. Suddenly, a person wearing a hoodie cuts him off and calls him by his arena name. This strange fella takes off their cape to reveal that they are a lady. Arhan can sense the overwhelming aura from the lady, and fear grips him right where he is. He takes a closer look at the lady and her sword, and this is when he immediately figures out that the Black Bride is a lady. Arhan remains mute as Black Bride walks toward him, and he tries to deny the fact that he is Liam. Black Bride sighs before telling him that he is making things unbearably annoying. She grabs her weapon, ready to unsheath her sword. Arhan also grabs the needle as he prepares for a counterattack, but before he even knows what is going on, Black Bride has gotten to him. She holds her sword to his neck before he can even react to anything, to show him that she can kill him at that instant. Black Bride then tells Arhan to stop wasting her time because she knows that he is the one they call Liam, thanks to the obvious things all around him. However, Black Bride tells Arhan that he has no reason to fear because he only came to make him an offer. Arhan asks her what offer she is talking about, and she tells him that she would like him to quit the match because going ahead with it would be stupid of him. Black Bride tells Arhan that she can see that he has a bright future, and she would love to preserve that. Arhan asks her what will happen if he insists that he wants to fight, and Black Bride tells him with all coldness that he would have to pay for it. Later that night, a troubled Arhan heads to the Wall of Honor to meet with Tom. Tom is surprised to see him that late in the night, and he asks him why he is there. Arhan apologizes for coming so late because he knows that it is rude to show up without warning, but he has a shameless request. With a serious and determined face, Arhan asks Tom if there is any way he can borrow a sword from the Wall of Honor. After Black Bride's visit, Liam watches her leave with clear admiration, noting that her talent is completely wasted in this era. He explains that most swordwalkers hit a wall and crumble, but Black Bride is different since nothing is blocking her growth. With just a slight push, she could ascend to the next realm, making her a once-in-a-generation genius. Hearing this level of praise from Liam, who rarely compliments anyone, Arhan is left stunned. Recalling how Black Bride nearly took his head earlier, he realizes the gap between them isn't just large, but it's straight up hopeless. But still, backing down isn't in his vocabulary, so he makes up his mind to face her. Since Arhan refuses to forfeit, Liam wastes no time and urges him to find the second sword. That night, Arhan meets Tom at the Hall of Honor and asks to borrow a sword. Tom hesitates before asking if it's related to his duel against the Black Bride. Arhan is stunned that Tom has already heard about it, and Tom lets him know that the news about the fight has already spread like wildfire because it's a fight between two most promising gladiators. However, Tom can clearly see what's going on behind the scenes. The arena isn't promoting Arhan, but they're clearly setting him up. Tom tries to talk some sense into him, explaining that Black Bride isn't someone he should be fighting yet. This is because she's a genius from the Eastern Continent, a top graduate from one of the Iron Kingdom's 3 great academies, and an undefeated force in the arena, which is why Tom believes it's not the time for Arhan to face such a daunting fighter like the Black Bride, even though he's an excellent fighter with a lot of potential too. He advises Arhan again to gain more experience through other battles and challenge her after building the strength to withstand such a force. He believes it's the only way to put on a spectacular fight while staying alive. Arhan briefly thinks about Tom's words and simply thanks him for the advice, after which he declares that he still wants to fight Black Bride. Like a true menace, he activates his secret technique, emotional manipulation. With trembling hands and a shaky voice, he puts on a performance so convincing it deserves an award. He admits he's terrified, but claims he doesn't want to run away from fear. He then asks to borrow a sword from the hall, saying the spirits of past warriors will give him courage. To seal the deal, he proposes a win-win that if he survives, he earns the sword properly. And if he dies, Tom can just take it back from his corpse. And just in case that wasn't enough, Arhan throws in a final move, acting like he'll accept rejection without complaint. After a brief internal struggle, Tom gives in and agrees to bend the rules for him. He believes Arhan has the spirit of a true fighter, making him worthy of this exception. Instead of breaking character, Arhan pushes even further, asking again if it won't cause trouble. This completely finishes Tom, who reassures him with full confidence, and at this point, Tom is already emotionally compromised. Arhan bows repeatedly in gratitude, while Liam watches from the side, absolutely entertained. He even comments that Arhan might have more talent in acting than swordsmanship and could have made serious money in the entertainment industry. With everything set, Arhan excitedly looks forward to devouring his second sword and assimilating its power for himself. The next day, the arena erupts with excitement as the long-awaited duel begins. The crowd roars, hungry for blood, as Black Bride, dressed in her signature dark bride attire, steps onto the battlefield, but behind the scenes, things are far more sinister. The arena had already instructed her to completely crush Arhan and not just defeat him, but take one of his limbs for maximum entertainment value. At first, she refuses without hesitation, but the moment they reveal the reward is a legendary dragon sword from the Eastern Continent, everything changes. This is because the blade holds deep meaning for swordsmen from her homeland, and it's something she's been chasing for a long time. Faced with such an offer, she falls silent, and the attendant takes it as acceptance, urging her to put on a show worthy of the crowd. Despite agreeing, Black Bride isn't completely heartless, and her conscience pushes her to meet Arhan beforehand and offer him a way out. She gave him a chance to forfeit and avoid what's coming, but she's disappointed when he still shows up at the arena. As Arhan takes his place on the battlefield, she starts to warn him one last time that whatever happens next is on him. However, as she prepares to draw her sword, an eerie feeling washes over her. She senses a thick blood stench in the air but finds it hard to believe it's coming from Arhan. What she doesn't know is that the feeling is coming from the second sword Arhan just consumed, a weapon from Crowd City, once wielded by a fighter drenched in blood who carved his own path to freedom. Crowd City was once a beautiful landmark that belonged to a fallen republic, but after breaking away, it became one of the 6 free cities. Back then, it was known as a paradise, a place filled with beauty and prosperity. However, that image is long gone because the city has now turned into a depressing nightmare where freedom and hope are luxuries that the common people cannot afford. This downfall began with the nobles, whose greed knew no limits. They first sold off the city's territory to a foreign superpower known as the Golden Empire, and even after that, they continued to exploit their own people. Eventually, they began selling off basic human rights just to rack up loans from the Red Bank, pushing the entire city into massive debt. Because of this, the citizens of Crowd City were reduced to nothing more than slaves. Human rights became non-existent, and the people were forced to endure constant suffering. Among those watching this slow destruction was a man named Fang, who could only observe as the city sank deeper into despair. He saw fathers getting beaten to death while begging on the streets, and mothers selling themselves just to keep their children alive. However, everything changed for Fang when his younger sister died from a simple fever because he couldn't afford medicine. That moment broke something inside him, and he began to question why everyone in the city continued to accept such a cruel fate without resistance. His answer unexpectedly came one day during a public execution. The prisoner was being put to death simply because he fought back against a drunk tourist who had been harassing him. Normally, violence within the city was ignored, but since the victim was a foreigner, the authorities decided to make an example out of the citizen. Despite how clearly unfair the situation was, no one stepped forward to protest. The people were too afraid of the consequences, fearing that any resistance would only lead to harsher treatment from the foreigners. However, something unexpected happened after the execution. The city fell into an eerie silence, and for several days, that silence continued. It was like a fragile tension masked as peace had spread across the land. But that wasn't peace, but rather the tourists and foreigners who once looked down on the citizens were simply being cautious. This is because the same people they once treated as trash had now shown that they could fight back, and that realization planted fear in their hearts. For the first time, the balance shifted, and from this, Fang came to a powerful conclusion. He believed the chains binding the people were not just forced upon them, but were also maintained by their own fear and complacency. If they truly wanted change, then those chains could have long been broken. However, he also understood that freedom would not come without a price. It would require bloodshed, and someone would have to bear that burden. Accepting this reality, Fang chose to step into the shadows as an assassin, deciding that he would become the one to deliver judgment. He was willing to stain his hands with blood if it meant restoring the freedom and paradise that Crowd City had lost. And now, Fang's very weapon is one that Arhan has devoured, and hope can help him turn things around in this duel. Soon after, the announcer takes the stage and officially declares the start of the long-awaited battle, sending waves of excitement through the crowd. Black Bride quietly studies Arhan's aura, recalling that the first time she saw him, he had the air of a mercenary. But now his aura feels like that of one who has soaked in a vast river of bloodshed. She notes that Arhan now seems more like an assassin shrouded in darkness and blood. She continues to study him, trying to make sense of what exactly he is, but she comes up empty, unable to wrap her head around the bizarre situation. She studies him closely, trying to understand what exactly changed, but nothing adds up. The gap between what she saw before and what she is sensing now is too wide, leaving her unable to make sense of it. Still, she pushes those thoughts aside, deciding to finish him off. Without hesitation, she lunges forward with a swift and precise strike, fully expecting to defeat him instantly. However, to her shock, Arhan effortlessly evades the attack, moving with a level of speed that should have been impossible for him. This immediately throws her off because just a night ago, his movements were slow and clumsy, far from anything that could challenge her. Based on that version of him, there was no scenario where he could react in time, let alone counter her attack so smoothly. But now, he moves like a completely different person. Before Black Bride can process what is happening, Arhan closes the distance, attacking with the needle in one hand and the assassin's sword in the other. As their blades collide, Black Bride begins to notice something even more unsettling. His breathing and even the flow of his movements feel unnatural, as if they belong to someone else entirely. As the exchange continues, Arhan keeps up with her pace, effortlessly matching her strikes. This only deepens her confusion as everything about him contradicts what she knows. Standing before her is not the same inexperienced fighter from before, but something far more dangerous, forcing her to question what Arhan truly is. Arhan ignores her questions and continues countering her attacks while precisely dodging every strike, forcing Black Bride to carefully analyze his fighting style. She quickly notices that his movements are unusual, as he fights like a mercenary and an assassin at the same time. His movements constantly shift without delay, making it extremely difficult to predict what he will do next. The seamless transition between styles messes up her timing, and for a moment it gives Arhan the upper hand. Even he can tell how much he has improved, realizing that he has already surpassed the level of a sword beginner. However, despite how impressive he looks, Arhan is painfully aware that what he's doing is nothing more than reckless theatrics. He knows he is forcing movements that don't fully belong to him, and it doesn't take long before his fear becomes reality. Black Bride gradually adapts and soon breaks through his rhythm, pushing him back. Once she finishes analyzing him, she calmly asks if he has any more tricks left, making it clear that she has already figured him out. At the same time, the crowd erupts with excitement. They are shocked that a mere bronze-ranked fighter like Arhan has managed to hold his ground against the undefeated Black Bride. His recent victories have already earned him attention, and now more people are placing bets on him surviving the duel. Some even begin to believe he might actually win, while others remain convinced that there is no way an inexperienced fighter can defeat someone as ruthless as her. Still, the cheers grow louder, with some spectators rooting for him, while others simply hope he at least dies in a more impressive way instead of like a gutter rat. Despite the cheers around him, Arhan remains uneasy as he plans for his next move. He can feel the overwhelming killing intent radiating from Fang's blade, along with the heavy stench of bloodshed within it. At that moment, Liam urges Arhan to fully embrace the sensations coming from both the mercenary's needle and the assassin's sword. He explains that while their lives were completely different, both weapons share the same purpose. They were created to face enemies stronger than their wielders, making them swords born from struggle. However, Liam warns him that absorbing the life of an assassin will not be easy, especially for someone as inexperienced as him. If he loses control, the sword could consume him instead. He advises Arhan to understand Fang's life, accept it, and make it his own. Taking in those words, Arhan steadies himself and begins to breathe deeply. With each breath, mana starts to flow within him, helping him regain his composure. Noticing this, Liam tells him that the real battle is only just beginning. He explains that Black Bride has already analyzed his abilities during the first exchange, meaning she will no longer hold back. From this point onward, she will fight seriously. Arhan quickly understands the gravity of his situation as the arena has no place to hide, and that is a major disadvantage for him since an assassin's strength lies in the shadows. On top of that, Black Bride is now fully focused, which means he has lost any element of surprise. With no clear advantage, he concludes that his only option is to create distance and stall for time until the 3-minute limit is reached. Acting on that thought, Arhan swiftly takes several steps backwards, widening the gap between them. However, in the very next moment, Black Bride closes the distance instantly, leaving him completely stunned. From the audience, Tom watches without surprise, knowing that Arhan has yet to understand the true power of a swordwalker. It turns out that at that level, fighters can extend their mana outward, creating a path that allows them to overwhelm opponents while controlling both offense and defense. But more importantly, that same power can flow within their bodies, enhancing their physical abilities to a superhuman level. Soon, the Black Bride begins her relentless assault, forcing Arhan into a defensive position where he struggles just to keep up. It quickly becomes clear to him that she had been holding back earlier, because the speed and power she is displaying now are far beyond what he experienced before. Arhan desperately searches for an opening or loophole to explore, but finds none. He notes that, unlike most fighters who leave small gaps between their attacks, her swordsmanship is flawless. Every movement connects seamlessly into the next, leaving no room for counterattacks. To Arhan, her style feels less like fighting and more like art. Each strike flows like the brushstrokes of a master painter, with the battlefield acting as her canvas where she creates perfection with every swing of her blade. Even as he struggles, Arhan continues searching for a way out, while being awestruck by the warrior before him. When another powerful strike comes at him, he blocks it with everything he has, using both the mercenary's needle and the assassin's blade. Even Liam is impressed as he witnesses the Black Bride's technique, explaining that swordsmen from the Eastern continent practice martial arts, a mysterious form of combat that aligns their movements with nature itself. Even their footwork is as light as a feather, and every swing of their blade is graceful, creating a beautiful, flowing path in the air. Each beautiful strike crashes down like a wave and only stops when it strikes the opponent at the receiving end. Arhan continues to dodge every flawless blade stroke, but just when he thinks he's in the clear, the Black Bride maps out a path that catches him dead center. And with a powerful leap, she lunges forward to finish her masterpiece. But the intense pressure from the incoming attack forces Arhan into the life of the assassin, Fang. From Fang's memories, he's taken back to the rotting crowd city and the blood Fang had to shed in his path to freedom and his fight against the corrupt nobles of the land. The constant feeling of death and the stench of blood after every attack. And on one of such days, Fang tried to escape pursuit only to find himself stuck in a dead end with no escape path. Standing before him was an opponent far beyond anything he could handle, so the only path to survival was escape. And now even that is gone. As his opponent crafts a decisive path, Fang realizes that his life has finally reached its end. However, as the enemy lunges towards him, something that can only be described as a miracle happens. Fang notices a tiny loophole before him, which he soon realizes is the same thing that has helped him escape death several times. As the enemy closes in and strikes, Fang somehow dodges the attack and prepares for a counterattack using that loophole. At that very moment, Arhan finishes assimilating that memory and finds his own gap against the Black Bride. He immediately strikes her on the top of her shoulder, drawing blood. The Black Bride is taken by surprise as Arhan dashes to the other end, having finally understood how assassins always find a way to survive even in the most insane conditions. However, this is something he couldn't have achieved on his own, but with the memories of a genius assassin. The Black Bride is surprised that Arhan was able to break through her perfectly mapped path in only a few seconds. However, the devastating attack she left on Arhan's ribs convinces her that he has reached the end of his road. Arhan freezes as he becomes painfully aware of the pain in his abdomen. He notes that the Black Bride is an overwhelming opponent compared to Fang's opponent, who was also a skilled swordwalker. She not only avoided a fatal wound from Arhan, but also managed to deal damage to him in only a split second. Because of that attack, Arhan's ribs feel like they might snap with even the slightest movement, which is why he remains frozen in place. In his injured state, Arhan fears he might not be able to use the mercenary or assassin's arts, and creating a distance to buy time is even more impossible. After analyzing his options, he concludes that the best course of action would be to forfeit the duel. He briefly considers taking this route even though it might be humiliating. At least with his life intact, he believes he can rank up properly later. However, that stubbornness in the blood of the caravans washes over him, making Arhan more determined to keep going. Watching his young descendant renew his resolve to fight despite the odds against him, Liam smiles proudly. Even the announcer is stunned that a mere bronze fighter managed to inflict injury on the undefeated warrior queen. He begins to wonder if Arhan plans to keep fighting in his injured state. Seeing him prepare for another round, the announcer realizes Arhan has the makings to become a star with such relentless determination. So he pumps up the crowd and announces that Arhan has about 10 more seconds to victory. As Arhan and the Black Bride clash in their final face-off, Liam watches his young descendant, whom he believes doesn't have the makings of a genius. For Liam, a genius refers to those who find a way in the midst of impossible conditions. They always forge their own paths when faced with trials that seem impossible to everyone else and emerge successful. And geniuses are those whose achievements last through history. But Liam concludes that Arhan is clearly not one of them because his body is weak and his mastery of the sword is low. While normal fighters can swiftly learn 10 steps, Arhan can only manage fewer than 3 in the same time, which is the limit his body can take. Meanwhile, Arhan stands firm despite being cut in multiple places by the Black Bride. This makes Liam believe that Arhan might just be among the few who are considered greater than geniuses because they never give up. These select few are called legends, and their raw determination sometimes causes a massive ripple, making them heroes. Liam believes that Arhan's relentlessness, even when faced with the loss of everything he holds dear, is what makes him different. Because in that darkness, he never let go of his sword until the last moment. Liam points out that this is what gives Arhan the qualities of becoming a hero. However, the next moment, the Black Bride does something that takes Arhan by surprise. She uses his exact same mercenary dancer-like movement to attack him and even makes sure he's aware of it. Unfortunately, before Arhan can figure out what's going on, her sword plunges into his shoulder, fatally wounding him. This makes Liam conclude that Arhan's hero drive was a bit lacking, but he encourages him not to be disappointed. Just as Arhan collapses in the Black Bride's arms with her blade stuck in his shoulder, the host announces that the set time has elapsed, declaring Arhan the winner. The crowd erupts in a massive cheer as soon as the host announces that Arhan has been promoted to the silver rank and will be given the silver medal. Meanwhile, the Black Bride lets go of Arhan, and he collapses to the ground while she quietly watches him. Even though she spared his life, the Black Bride notes that she did quite a number on him because once she holds the sword, she can't hold back. Though some might call it talent and others madness, she believes it is basically violence. Yet a burst of excitement rushes through her as it has been a while since she faced such a formidable opponent, and this has piqued her interest in Arhan even more. Just then, a voice telepathically interrupts her thoughts, reminding her of her contract to take one of Arhan's limbs in exchange for the dragon's sword. He lets the Black Bride know that she will not receive the reward if she fails to keep her end of the deal. From the VIP area, the annoying noble dishes out instructions to her using a glowing orb. He gives her one last chance to take Arhan's arm as her trophy purely for entertainment purposes in exchange for the Drago sword. As the annoying voice continues to push her, the Black Bride hesitates. But after a while, she curses him out and breaks the telepathic link before sheathing her sword. With that, she makes up her mind to leave the city for a while, but suddenly, a bright light explodes before her eyes. The Black Bride tries to make sense of it, and as she senses a familiar but unsettling aura, Liam materializes in front of her. Even Liam is surprised by the unexpected development and wonders if it's a result of Arhan's loss of consciousness or because of the aftermath of the fierce fight. He greets the Black Bride, referring to her as the Eastern Little Girl. He tells her that she's one of the rare ones from the East called shamans who can sense souls and possess a powerful divine energy. Liam is amazed that the Black Bride has such a sharp sense alongside her superior martial talent. Meanwhile, the Black Bride is still in a daze, wondering whether the sight before her is an illusion. But one thing becomes clear to her, and that is that the person in front of her has a heart sword, which is something only those who have reached the end of the sword can manifest. The heart sword is also a symbol of someone at the swordmaster level. The Black Bride recalls that Swordmaster Carlos is surrounded by 10 blooming heart swords after he rose to become the strongest swordsman alive. However, the number of heart swords above Liam leaves the Black Bride bewildered. She begins to count, and from dozens, it soon stretches into hundreds and thousands, and she loses count, realizing they cover the entire sky. She studies him closely, unable to determine the nature of the creature towering before her. Sensing her dilemma, Liam tells her that she's not equipped to fully understand the answers to all her questions. He then encourages her that it's something she can also reach for, and it is known as the Land of the Swords or the final destination of all blades. Just as quickly as the illusion appeared, it vanished before her eyes. Before vanishing into thin air, Liam says he looks forward to the day they meet again, and he even calls her Seolyeon, which so happens to be her real name. Seolyeon stands there in a daze as memories of the stories her father used to tell flood back into her mind. Back then, he told them a legend about swordsmen who ascend when their realm reaches the heavens. Seolyeon's father says such swordsmen go to the land where immortals dwell. He explains that this place is a paradise filled with happiness, where those who have departed will one day welcome their loved ones. He also told Seolyeon that he would have no regrets if one day their family could be together again there. Having seen Liam briefly, Seolyeon realizes that the legend from her father's stories was real, and the God of Swords actually existed. The following day, Seolyeon approaches Arhan in the recovery room and introduces herself to him. But he is surprised and confused when she asks to follow him, so he doubles back to ask again, wondering if she has a few screws loose from the fierce battle between them in the arena. However, Seolyeon states clearly that she plans to stay by his side to see, hear, and feel everything. She tells Arhan that following him is the fastest way for her to achieve her dream of reaching the end of the sword and practically begs him to allow her. Arhan is confused and stares at her, bewildered, wondering if this is some type of new scam. Because it makes no sense that the all-powerful Black Bride would offer to be a follower to a frail scarecrow like himself. Seeing him flustered, Liam tells Arhan about his encounter with Seolyeon after he passed out in the arena. Liam proudly declares that she was captivated by his overwhelming eternal riz. Arhan almost gags as he watches his aged ancestor act like a clown fresh off the block. Liam continues to boast about how, since ancient times, swordsmen immediately become his loyal lackeys just by seeing his shadow. He then says he pities Arhan because at his age, he should be rolling in the sheets and experiencing crazy love with a girl like Seolyeon instead of chasing after bloodshed and revenge. Unfortunately, since Arhan has been forced by fate down the path of the sword, Liam advises him to cast away any romantic entanglements. He states that holding on to such attachment will only hold him back and make him weak. Liam then reminds him that he is the descendant of the caravan and an avenger of the ones who have been taken. He urges Arhan to weigh Seolyeon's value as a swordswoman and determine if it's real. Arhan quietly studies her notes that she's a high-level asset who wants to swear loyalty to him. And since Liam has also acknowledged her talent, Seolyeon will be helpful towards fulfilling his goal. Recalling how skilled she was during their fight, Arhan concludes that her presence will definitely push him to become better. So he introduces himself properly and welcomes her to join him as a neighbor, and Seolyeon also puts herself in his care. On their way back to Caravan, Arhan tells Seolyeon that he would like to clarify something before they get to his territory, and he urges her not to take offense at it. Arhan tells the lady that he is currently in a complicated relationship that he can't properly explain, but the baseline is that he can't be in a relationship with her. The mood immediately changes when Arhan says this, and Arhan continues by saying he is pretty sure that Seolyeon doesn't see him that way too. Nonetheless, Arhan reminds her that they are of opposite genders, so things can change unexpectedly. Just in case this happens, Arhan wants Seolyeon to understand his stand. Seolyeon then replies, telling him that she understands why he is worried, but assures him that there is no need to. Seolyeon completely ruins Arhan's ego as she tells him that he is not her type, so there is no freaking way anything will happen between them. Liam almost dies of laughter when he hears this, but Seolyeon doesn't even stop there. She tells Arhan she prefers men who are taller than her with a bulky body and sharp, intense features. She totally crushes Arhan by revealing that she wants nothing to do with skinny and frail guys. In addition, she says Arhan looks way too gentle, and he appears as the type who would apologize even if someone else started the fight. She roasts him so badly that even the carriage driver starts sweating on Arhan's behalf. Seolyeon tells Arhan that she has nothing against him, but it is pretty obvious that he is not her type. After saying this, Seolyeon asks if she still needs to continue, but Arhan shamefully says no because he might just wither away if he gets another round of roasting from the utterly blunt girl. Since they are past this, Seolyeon tells Arhan that she has something else to ask him. She asks him if there are other neighbors in his village, since he said she was the second one. Arhan mentions that a knight actually moved in recently, and he is pretty sure that she will get along with him. Arhan explains that Patel is skilled and a good person at that too. In fact, Arhan tells Seolyeon that Patel is a very kind person. Not long after this, they arrive at the village, and after alighting from the carriage, Arhan notices that Seolyeon has just a small bag with her, and he asks if this is all she has. Seolyeon confirms this, revealing that she doesn't have that much load in the first place. Seolyeon says a sword and a day's worth of rations are enough for her because if she exhausts them, she can always get more. On the other hand, Seolyeon notices that Arhan has a lot in his bag. In addition, she remembers that Arhan had only one sword back at the arena, but he now has at least 3 daggers. Arhan mentions that his sword got damaged in the last match, so he picked up a spare while he was in the city. Fortunately for him, he actually made more money because of his promotion to silver, and thanks to this, he was able to get some armor that he was missing. Arhan is happy that he actually visited Firma, the city of swords. Upon arriving at the entrance of the castle, they are met with a shocking scene. Petal is standing in the middle of corpses that he has cut up. Petal is surprised to see that Arhan has returned, and he apologizes for the embarrassing scene that he met. He mentions that some uninvited guests showed up, so he hasn't had the time to clean up. Petal notices Seolyeon, and he smiles at her because he can easily see that she is the new neighbor that he talked about. Petal continues yapping, but Arhan cuts him short, telling him to catch his breath first. Seolyeon looks totally stunned as she stares at the gory scene in front of her. Arhan shamefully walks up to Patel to whisper in his ear because he just ruined the image of Patel being a very kind man that he described for Solyan. On the other hand, Solyan could see that there is nothing ordinary about the village whatsoever. After they settle in, Petal explains that several intruders showed up while he was away. Fortunately, some of them backed up after he warned them, so there was nothing too serious about that. However, about a week ago, a completely different kind of group started targeting the village. Petal tried to handle things diplomatically, but they decided to attack him that very day. This was why he had no choice but to cut them down, which is why they met such a horrific scene. He lets Arhan know that from what he has gathered, the intruders are not ordinary bandits because they call themselves the Red Wolf Brotherhood. Arhan is surprised because names tied to colors and paired with animals are usually reserved for night orders. Petal confirms this, explaining that such names represent identity and purpose. As a former knight himself, he finds it insulting for lawless bandits to imitate them. However, he warns that this makes the situation even more dangerous. When Arhan asks why, Seolyeon explains that a group bold enough to mimic knights is either massive in scale or led by someone powerful enough to look down on knights entirely. At that very moment, Liam tells Arhan that this group is perfect for him to use as prey. With a mischievous grin, he urges Arhan to use Fang's blade to wipe out the arrogant Red Wolf Brotherhood without the help of Seolyeon and Patel. However, Arhan feels uneasy about this, and he was already expecting Liam to cook up some impossible task, given how he has remained quiet for a while. He immediately refuses the proposal, pointing out that even Patel, a swordwalker, had a hard time handling only a few, so he can't understand why Liam would send him to take out an entire organization without even knowing the extent of their strength, but Liam reminds him of the steel blood that runs through his veins as a caravan. He points out that steel becomes stronger the more it is hammered. He adds that this is the perfect opportunity to truly master Fang's blade, and if Arhan can overcome this on his own, Liam believes he'll finally forge his own path instead of just copying the lives behind the swords he devours. That single statement hooks him instantly, and without hesitation, Arhan turns to Patel and asks for the location of the bandits' hideout.